Respect is not always expressed in words. In fact, the purest form of respect is often found in the silence between words, in the pauses that allow space for others, in the restraint that prevents us from dominating, and in the quiet presence that acknowledges another's existence without judgment or demand. Silence is often mistaken for weakness, but it holds a deeper strength. It is the discipline of self-control, the mastery of impulse, and the recognition that words are not always needed to communicate what is essential. Respect in silence is the art of allowing things to be as they are without the compulsion to change, interfere, or prove superiority. When we fall into constant talking, constant explaining, or constant defending, we leave no space for others to enter. Noise can become a form of domination. It demands attention, it consumes the atmosphere, and it creates imbalance. Silence, on the other hand, allows others to breathe, to express themselves, or simply to feel safe in the presence of someone who does not impose. To practice respect in silence is to cultivate humility, to remind oneself that the world does not revolve around our voice alone, that our perspective is not the only one worthy of being heard. It is an inner bow to the truth that life is richer when space is shared rather than filled. In many traditions, silence has been seen as sacred. Temples and monasteries hold silence not as emptiness but as fullness. The silence of the monk is not void but overflowing presence. It is a silence that listens more deeply than ears can, a silence that respects the invisible dimension of existence. To remain quiet in the face of someone's story, without rushing to give advice or commentary, is to show respect for the weight of their experience. To listen without interruption is to acknowledge that their truth matters, that their voice deserves to unfold without being cut off or overshadowed. Respect in silence requires patience, and patience itself is a form of reverence. There is also respect in holding back the need to correct. Many people listen not to understand but to reply. In doing so, they disrespect not only the other but also the essence of the conversation. Respect in silence means resisting the temptation to always add, to always prove knowledge, to always place one's opinion above the flow of dialogue. It is the wisdom of restraint, the awareness that silence can be more powerful than speech. By allowing words to dissolve into the quiet, we allow the essence of what was said to linger longer, to echo, to settle deeply into the heart. Respect in silence is not limited to communication with others, it extends to how we treat the world itself. To walk in a forest and remain silent is an act of respect. To stand before the ocean and listen rather than shout is respect. To sit in meditation and refrain from filling the air with unnecessary sound is respect for the moment, for the space, and for the unseen energies that surround us. Silence connects us to the pulse of existence in ways that words cannot. It is in silence that we hear the whisper of the wind, the subtle rhythm of the breath, the heartbeat of life itself. Disrespect often comes in the form of noise, noise of opinions, noise of arrogance, noise of careless words that wound without thought. But respect can be cultivated through conscious silence, the silence that recognizes that not every moment requires our intrusion. Silence teaches us that our ego does not need to dominate every interaction. It trains us to step back, to soften, to allow the dignity of space to be preserved. This kind of silence is not passive, it is active respect, a choice made with awareness. In relationships, silence often carries a deeper form of intimacy than words. When two people can sit together without needing to fill the space with conversation, when their silence is comfortable rather than awkward, it is a sign of trust and respect. To be silent in the presence of another is to affirm that their being, as it is enough. There is no need for performance, no need for masks, no need to constantly entertain or justify. Respect in silence allows authenticity to exist. It allows the soul to breathe without pressure. In moments of conflict, silence can also be respect. Not the silence of avoidance, but the silence of self-control. Instead of reacting impulsively, silence gives space for emotions to cool, for clarity to return, for the situation to be approached with maturity rather than aggression. Words spoken in anger often become weapons that cut too deeply, while silence can prevent wounds from forming. Respect in silence here is respect not only for the other, but also for oneself, for the dignity of not reducing oneself to the chaos of reaction. There is also an inner dimension to respect in silence. To respect silence within oneself is to honor the moments when the mind becomes still. We live in a world of endless noise, distraction, and stimulation. The silence inside is often drowned out by the external demands. But when we respect our own silence, we respect the inner sanctuary that connects us to clarity, to truth, and to balance. It is in inner silence that wisdom arises, that intuition sharpens, that the mind regains its natural strength. Respecting silence within is respecting the source of our own power. Silence is not emptiness, it is presence. And respect in silence is not absence. It is the highest form of acknowledgement. It says without saying, I see you, I hear you, I honor you, I allow you to be. It is the pause that gives meaning to words, the space that allows life to expand, the humility that recognizes that silence often speaks louder than speech. To understand respect in silence is to understand that silence itself is a language, one that carries dignity, reverence, and truth. It is a language that requires no translation because it is understood by the heart, not by the ears. Trust is often spoken about as a choice, a leap into the unknown, a risk that carries both the possibility of pain and the possibility of growth. Yet the essence of deep trust, the kind of trust that does not falter or waver, lies not in constant questioning but in surrender. To trust without question is to release the mind from its endless search for certainty, to allow the heart to rest in the flow of life without demanding guarantees. This form of trust is not naive, it is not careless. It is a discipline, a practice, and a form of strength that rises above the fears and doubts that weigh heavily on the human spirit. The mind is naturally restless. It seeks reasons, explanations, and evidence before it allows itself to feel safe. In relationships, it asks for proof. In challenges, it demands reassurance. In the silence of the unknown, it becomes loud with doubts and what-ifs. But true trust begins where questions lose their hold. To trust without question is to recognize that life is not obligated to answer every doubt we present. It means shifting from the demand of certainty to the acceptance of uncertainty. Only then can trust transform from a fragile decision into a steady way of being. The practice of trusting without question does not come easily. It requires inner discipline, much like training the body to withstand pressure or the mind to remain focused under distraction. Every time fear arises, the natural impulse is to seek control. We question others, we question life, and often we even question ourselves. But the more we chase certainty, the further it runs. Certainty was never the foundation of trust. Trust was always the ability to step forward despite uncertainty, to let go of the constant need to analyze, and to lean into something greater than what the rational mind can measure. In silence, one begins to see how questioning often becomes a barrier. Questions are necessary for growth, but when trust is involved, too many questions are a sign of resistance. They reveal an unwillingness to rest in what is. Trust without question is the opposite of resistance. It is alignment. It is an inner state that does not fight reality, but flows with it. When the river moves, the water does not argue with the current. It does not question the stones along its path. It simply moves, unshaken, carrying its essence forward. When we trust without question, we also free ourselves from the weight of suspicion. Suspicion weakens the spirit. It poisons relationships and prevents the mind from resting. Doubt creates tension, and tension consumes energy. To live in constant questioning is to exhaust oneself in a battle that has no end. But when trust becomes natural, energy is released. That energy is then available for creativity, for growth, and for deeper awareness. Trust becomes the soil in which the seeds of transformation can grow, because only in trust can one truly surrender enough to change. Trust without question also means trusting oneself. This is perhaps the most challenging part. Many people have confidence in others or in external systems, but they struggle to believe in their own decisions, their own intuition, their own path. Self-doubt becomes a prison that keeps them from fully living. When one learns to trust without question, one begins to walk with clarity. Decisions flow without paralysis. Actions are taken without hesitation. The mind no longer obsesses over the past or fears the future. Instead, trust anchors us in the present, where all true power resides. It is important to see that trusting without question does not mean blindness. It is not about ignoring reality or denying what is true. Rather, it is the recognition that not everything requires proof before it can be lived. Trust is not blind, it is clear. Blindness is ignorance, but trust is awareness combined with surrender. The one who trusts is not asleep, they are awake in a way that the questioning mind cannot understand. Trust is therefore not a weakness, but a profound strength. To trust without question is also to step into the mystery of life. Life is vast, unpredictable, and often beyond human comprehension. The rational mind wants to explain every event, control every outcome, and predict every step. But life cannot be contained by reason alone. When one trusts, one opens to the mystery, to the unknown, to the sacred rhythm of existence that cannot be reduced to logic. Trust is the bridge that allows us to live fully in a world that will never give us all the answers. Those who learn to trust without question begin to embody a calmness that cannot be easily shaken. They no longer live at the mercy of circumstances or opinions. Their peace is not dependent on constant reassurance. Their clarity does not require validation. They walk with quiet confidence, knowing that the path ahead is not always visible, but that their steps are always supported. This trust becomes like breath, natural, effortless, essential. In training the mind and body, discipline is cultivated through repetition. The same is true for trust. Each time fear arises and one chooses not to question, the muscle of trust grows stronger. Each time doubt appears and one chooses not to entertain it, the foundation of trust becomes more solid. Over time, trust shifts from an effort to a state of being. It becomes the ground beneath the feet, steady and unshakable, even when storms rise. Trust without question, then, is not a single act, but a way of living. It is the quiet strength that arises when the need for certainty dissolves. It is the clarity that comes when suspicion is released. It is the calmness that grows when one aligns with the rhythm of life rather than resisting it. It is the freedom that emerges when self-doubt no longer holds power. It is the opening of the heart to the mystery of existence without demanding answers, without holding back, without fear of the unknown. There are moments in life when the external noise of the world becomes so loud that it drowns out the inner voice completely. Endless chatter, responsibilities, the pull of relationships, and the demands of society all weave together into a fabric of distractions. In this fabric, one begins to lose the thread of who they are and why they walk their path. Solitude becomes not just a preference but a necessity, a return to something that existed before the world laid its heavy hand on the shoulders. Solitude is not loneliness. It is not an escape out of fear or rejection of connection. Rather, it is a conscious decision to create space, to build a sanctuary where the inner spirit is allowed to breathe, recalibrate, and grow stronger. When solitude is spoken of, it is often misunderstood. People associate it with isolation, with turning away from others, with detachment that feels cold. But solitude is none of these. It is warmth, it is presence. It is the deliberate opening of a door inside oneself where clarity can walk in. Imagine a lake disturbed by constant ripples. It cannot reflect the sky clearly. Only when it becomes still does the full image of the heavens reveal itself. Solitude is that stillness for the mind, the calm that allows reflection, the silence that reveals what endless noise has hidden. Solitude carries within it the medicine of self-knowledge. In daily life, identities are built through what others mirror back. Names, roles, labels, duties. All these external definitions start shaping the way one sees oneself. But in solitude, stripped of recognition, stripped of approval, stripped even of judgment, the essence begins to speak. The quiet asks questions that the world rarely asks. Who are you without the applause? Who are you without the title? Who are you when no one is watching? In answering these questions, strength is born, a strength that does not depend on circumstance, but flows from an inner certainty. To create space for solitude is to dare to step into an unfamiliar room within one's being. For many, this space feels uncomfortable at first. It brings forward thoughts and emotions long buried, memories left unresolved, fears pushed aside. But these must surface, for they are part of the cleansing. Solitude is not merely a retreat, it is a confrontation. It strips away illusions, it forces honesty, it burns away the unnecessary until only the essential remains. This fire of solitude is not destructive, it is purifying, turning the raw materials of experience into wisdom. There is also discipline in solitude. It is not merely about sitting in a quiet place or walking alone through the forest. It is about holding one's attention steady, refusing the endless urge to reach outward for distraction, and turning the gaze inward. The discipline lies in resisting the comfort of filling silence with sound, the tendency to fill space with constant motion. Solitude requires patience, for the mind at first rebels, it fidgets, it tries to escape. But with practice, the chaos subsides, and underneath it emerges an order that feels timeless. In solitude, energy reorganizes itself. Thoughts that once appeared fragmented find coherence. Emotions that were scattered begin to settle. The spirit, weighed down by demands and expectations, begins to feel light. There is a restoration that no external company can provide, for it comes not from another, but from the source within. The deeper one allows this solitude to penetrate, the more profound the shift becomes. What once seemed impossible to face suddenly becomes bearable. What once felt unclear becomes illuminated. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable, not because the outer world changed, but because the inner foundation grew stronger. Solitude also creates a different relationship with time. In the constant motion of life, hours and days pass without pause, but in solitude, time stretches. Moments expand into spaces large enough to breathe fully. The mind no longer races to the next task, the next distraction, the next requirement. Instead, it rests in the present. This slowing down is not laziness, it is renewal. Like a bow that must be unstrung to retain its strength, like soil that must lie fallow to grow fertile again, the human being too requires periods of stillness to gather energy for the journey ahead. There is a subtle transformation that occurs when solitude is embraced fully. It is not loud, it does not announce itself with fanfare. Rather, it shifts the way one carries themselves in the world. Words spoken after solitude carry weight. Actions taken after solitude flow with intention. Decisions made after solitude resonate with clarity. Others may not see the process, but they will feel the difference. There is a quiet authority, a calm confidence, a presence that cannot be faked. It is the fragrance of solitude, the invisible strength drawn from the silence of being alone and fully at peace with it. The space for solitude is not something to be begged from the world, it is something to be created deliberately. It may be found in meditation, in walking, in writing, in sitting still. It may be found in a physical space or simply within the sanctuary of the mind. But however it is shaped, it must be guarded. It must be treated as sacred. Because in the end, solitude is not about separation but about connection. Connection to the deepest self, connection to the timeless source, connection to the unshakable truth that lies beneath all surfaces. Support is often misunderstood. Many people think support is simply expressed through words, encouragement, or presence. While these forms carry value, they can also be limited when they are not followed by real, tangible effort. True support is not passive, it is active. It is shown not in what one claims to feel, but in what one is willing to do. The essence of genuine support is action, and action itself becomes the language that requires no translation, no justification, and no embellishment. When we reflect on the word support, it immediately brings to mind images of being held, guided, or protected. Yet, if we look deeper, we realize that support is only meaningful when it manifests in the physical world. A thought that remains unexpressed, an intention that never moves beyond the realm of the mind, cannot be called support. Words can comfort temporarily, but when storms rise, when weight becomes too heavy to carry, it is the actions of others that truly sustain us. Support through action becomes the difference between being accompanied and being abandoned. In every relationship, whether with family, friends, or community, people often declare, "I am here for you." But the reality of such declarations is tested not in peaceful times, but in moments of challenge, difficulty, and discomfort. When someone falters, does support arrive only as verbal reassurance, or does it materialize as concrete effort? The one who takes action does not need to announce their loyalty, their actions reveal it without words. The one who shows up when it is inconvenient, who offers time, energy, or sacrifice without seeking recognition, embodies the essence of support. Support through action is powerful because it transcends the ego. Words can often be driven by the desire to be seen as kind, compassionate, or caring. They may be spoken to gain approval or to maintain an image. But action demands energy, and energy cannot be faked. To act in support of another requires willingness to step out of personal comfort and step into responsibility. It requires discipline, because often the act of supporting means setting aside our own immediate preferences. In this way, action cleanses support from superficiality and makes it authentic. Consider how nature demonstrates this principle. The tree does not simply whisper to the seed that it will provide shade. It grows, extends its branches, and embodies its promise through action. The river does not declare to the thirsty traveler that it holds water. It flows continuously and silently, offering life. Support in nature is never spoken. It is always enacted. When we align ourselves with this way, we move beyond empty assurance and step into living truth. Action also has a profound effect on energy exchange. When one chooses to act in support of another, the act itself creates movement. Energy is given and energy flows. This exchange builds connection, trust, and stability that cannot be achieved by words alone. A community that supports one another through action becomes strong because its foundation rests not on promises but on deeds. The strength of such bonds is unshakable because it is proven in practice. Furthermore, action transforms both the giver and the receiver. For the one who acts, there is growth in discipline, compassion, and humility. Supporting another requires awareness of needs outside of oneself. It demands attentiveness to details, a recognition of moments when silent presence must become decisive action. Through this, the individual learns to step beyond the narrow confines of self-concern and begins to embody service. For the one who receives, the experience of genuine support fosters trust, gratitude, and resilience. It creates the knowledge that they are not alone and that life, even in its most challenging moments, is shared. Support through action is not about grand gestures. Often, it is the small, consistent, and steady acts that hold the greatest meaning. A meal offered without being asked. Time given when it could have been spent elsewhere. Effort extended not because it was convenient, but because it was needed. These quiet actions accumulate and form the invisible scaffolding that holds lives together during difficulty. In contrast, empty words, no matter how beautifully spoken, dissolve quickly when they are unsupported by action. It is also important to recognize that support through action does not always mean doing what the other wishes. Sometimes it means doing what is necessary, even if it is misunderstood in the moment. Real support requires clarity and wisdom because not all actions are helpful simply because they are active. To truly support another is to discern what action will strengthen them, not weaken them. There are times when supporting means stepping back, allowing the other to face their trial, while still providing the resources and strength they need in the background. Action is not only about presence, it is about the right presence. In this way, support becomes an art. It is not a mechanical reaction, but a mindful practice. It requires attentiveness, patience, and alignment with truth. To master this art is to understand when to step forward, when to step aside, and when to hold steady. All of this is possible only through action, because without action, support remains an idea, and ideas do not hold weight until they are lived. Ultimately, the measure of support is never in what is said, but in what is done. Actions carry a weight that words cannot. They create impact in the physical world, shape outcomes, and alter realities. Words may inspire, but action sustains. Words may comfort, but action heals. Words may promise, but action fulfills. Through this understanding, we see that support is not about being seen as supportive, but about becoming the silent force that moves in the background, steady and unwavering, not seeking recognition, only serving the need in front of us. Struggle is not something most people desire, yet it is the very substance that shapes character, builds resilience, and awakens a deeper understanding of life. To appreciate struggle is not to glorify pain, but to recognize that what we endure becomes the fire that refines us. Every hardship, every moment of exhaustion, and every silent battle faced when no one is watching, these are not meaningless. They carry within them the seeds of growth, waiting to be acknowledged. Appreciation of struggle means stepping back from the surface of difficulty and learning to see the hidden treasures it offers, the wisdom it conceals, and the strength it cultivates. When a person struggles, it is not only a confrontation with the outer world, but also with the inner self. Struggle reveals what is weak, what is strong, and what lies dormant within. It unmasks illusions of comfort and exposes the raw edges of one's existence. The appreciation comes when one realizes that these trials do not diminish but rather refine. Struggle strips away what is unnecessary, demanding honesty with oneself and demanding patience. Without such tests, the true depth of one's potential would remain untouched, sleeping beneath layers of convenience and avoidance. In every struggle, there exists a mirror. This mirror reflects back the persistence that drives a person forward even when nothing seems to work. It reveals the capacity to endure, to adapt, to hold steady when storms rage. Many resist this mirror because it does not show an easy path, it shows the path of becoming. Yet, to appreciate this mirror is to understand that what one sees there is the foundation of future strength. Each challenge survived writes its lesson into the body, the mind, and the spirit. Each scar tells a story of endurance. Appreciation is the act of reading those stories with gratitude instead of bitterness. When the body grows weary under the weight of training, when sweat and fatigue demand surrender, there is a lesson hidden beneath. The lesson is not simply physical, but deeply psychological. Struggle teaches discipline, not by choice but by necessity. It reminds that progress is born not in comfort but in persistence through discomfort. To appreciate this is to see that the very moments one desires to quit are the same moments that give birth to transformation. Without the burn of strain, there is no strength. Without the silence of failure, there is no wisdom. The appreciation of struggle also arises from its ability to connect a person with humility. Struggle humbles because it shows limitations. It brings one to the edge of what is possible today and forces the recognition that there is still more to learn, more to refine, more to endure. In this humility lies the greatest gift, for only when one accepts not knowing, not being enough yet, can one truly begin to grow. The appreciation is found in bowing to the struggle, not as an enemy but as a teacher. In life, many seek ease, yet ease breeds stagnation. It is the struggle that keeps the spirit alive, sharp and alert. Just as steel is forged in fire, the human being is forged in trials. Without resistance, there is no resilience. Without difficulty, there is no depth. When one learns to appreciate struggle, life no longer feels like a constant battle against misfortune, but rather an unfolding of opportunities to discover hidden strength. The focus shifts from asking, "Why me?" to asking, "What can this teach me?" Such a shift is not denial of hardship, but transformation of perspective. Struggle also awakens empathy. When one has tasted hunger, endurance of loneliness, or the weight of personal battles, one develops an understanding of others' pain. Appreciation of struggle is not only individual but collective. It bridges the distance between people because hardship is universal. Everyone carries their own burdens, seen or unseen. To appreciate one's struggles is also to appreciate the humanity of others. Struggle softens the heart even as it strengthens the will, teaching compassion through the shared language of endurance. The mind, in the midst of struggle, often resists, fights, and rebels. Yet struggle also offers the possibility of inner silence. It pushes one so deeply into exhaustion that thoughts fade and only presence remains. In that presence lies a strange freedom, where the noise of complaint falls away and clarity emerges. The appreciation here is subtle, found in the quiet recognition that even in the harshest difficulty, there is a doorway into awareness. Struggle does not only build outer resilience but also inner stillness, teaching that strength and silence coexist. Every achievement admired from afar is built on unseen struggles. Behind every mastery lies countless hours of doubt, mistakes, and perseverance. The appreciation of struggle is to honor this unseen labor, to acknowledge that greatness is not born overnight, but carved slowly, painfully, with relentless effort. The surface of success is only the tip of the iceberg. Beneath it lies the struggle that gave it shape. To overlook this is to misunderstand the very essence of growth. To appreciate it is to give meaning to every small effort, every unnoticed attempt, every quiet act of persistence. Struggle also awakens gratitude. When life is too easy, gratitude fades. When one has fought, failed, and risen again, gratitude becomes natural. Every simple moment of peace, every small achievement, every little progress is magnified. The appreciation of struggle is also the appreciation of peace, for one knows deeply how fragile it is and how much it costs to reach it. Through struggle, one learns to value not only the destination but the journey itself, each step marked by lessons that cannot be bought or borrowed. Appreciating struggle does not mean desiring suffering, but it does mean understanding its necessity. It is recognizing that without it, there is no depth of character, no refinement of spirit, no awakening of hidden strength. It is recognizing that each trial endured contributes to the formation of an individual capable of withstanding more, giving more, understanding more. It is the shaping hand of existence, pressing, molding, and refining until something greater emerges from within. To appreciate this is to embrace life not only in moments of joy, but also in the crucible of challenge, where the essence of who one truly is begins to surface, and peaceful presence is not something that can be forced, nor can it be obtained through external possessions or the approval of others. It arises naturally when the mind is no longer trapped in constant struggle, when the body is no longer weighed down by restless desires, and when the spirit has found a steady rhythm within itself. Presence is not just being here physically, it is being here fully, without distraction, without masks, and without the heavy armor of pretense. Peaceful presence is the state where nothing more needs to be added. Nothing more needs to be removed, because one has finally recognized that being is already enough. In the modern world, the mind is rarely quiet. It jumps from thought to thought, like a monkey leaping from branch to branch, never staying still long enough to discover the depth of silence. This restless movement of the mind creates a constant background of tension, as if one is always on the verge of chasing or running away. Peaceful presence begins when that restlessness is allowed to dissolve, when the one who observes finally recognizes that chasing the next thought only leads further away from the stillness within. To be present is not to deny the past or to ignore the future. It is to place them in their rightful place as memories and possibilities, not as burdens or fears. Too often, people replay old stories, carrying the weight of what has already happened, even though those moments exist only in memory. At the same time, they worry about what is yet to come, imagining countless scenarios, most of which never unfold. Peaceful presence is the practice of releasing both, the attachment to what was and the anxiety of what might be, so that what is can finally be experienced with clarity. The body itself carries the marks of whether one is truly present. A body under tension reveals a mind in conflict. Shoulders rise, breathing becomes shallow, and movements lose their natural flow. But when the body is relaxed, when breath deepens and expands freely, the mind also reflects this ease. Breath is the gateway to presence, the bridge between the inner and outer worlds. By paying attention to the rhythm of the breath, one is gently reminded to return to the now, again and again, until presence becomes the natural state. Peaceful presence does not depend on a specific environment. Many believe they must escape into nature, sit on a mountain, or find a quiet retreat before presence can arise. Yet even in the midst of noise, chaos and movement, presence is possible. It is not about controlling the external world, but about mastering the internal one. Silence is not only the absence of sound, it is the stillness that exists even when sounds surround you. A peaceful presence does not collapse under disturbance, but remains steady, like the calm depths of the ocean beneath the waves. The power of peaceful presence lies in the way it transforms interactions. When someone is fully present, without agenda, without judgment, others feel it immediately. Conversations become deeper, connections more authentic, because the energy of distraction has been removed. Presence gives the gift of attention, and attention is one of the rarest offerings in a world where most are too preoccupied to truly listen. By embodying presence, one creates a space where others can also begin to rest, to breathe, and to be more authentic themselves. Discipline plays a role in cultivating peaceful presence. The mind will not simply stop wandering on its own. It must be guided, trained, and reminded again and again. Just as a body gains strength through consistent practice, the mind gains stability through returning to presence. Meditation is one of the clearest paths, not as an escape, but as a training ground. Sitting quietly observing thoughts without attachment, and watching the natural rhythm of breath builds the capacity to remain present beyond the practice itself. Over time, what begins as an exercise becomes a natural way of being. Peaceful presence is also a reflection of alignment between thought, word, and action. When one thinks one way but speaks another, or promises something but acts differently, a quiet tension arises within. This dissonance prevents peace. But when inner values, outer expression, and daily choices all move in the same direction, there is no conflict within. The person feels whole, unbroken, and undivided. This inner harmony radiates outward, and others can sense it without words. Peace becomes visible, not because of what is said, but because of what is embodied. In peaceful presence, time feels different. Moments are no longer rushed, and the need to constantly measure life against a clock fades. Instead of being consumed by the speed of days, one begins to notice details that are often overlooked. The sound of leaves moving in the wind, the texture of the air, the expression in someone's eyes. Each moment becomes rich, full, and alive because the mind is not already somewhere else. This shift from quantity to quality allows life itself to expand, even without changing its external structure. The deeper one rests in peaceful presence, the more energy becomes available. Stress, worry, and constant mental chatter consume tremendous amounts of vitality. When they fade, that energy is not lost but returned. Suddenly, creativity awakens, clarity sharpens, and strength returns. The same tasks that once felt heavy become lighter because they are no longer carried with resistance. Peaceful presence does not weaken, it strengthens because it frees up the wasted energy that comes from living in conflict with the moment. Peaceful presence also dissolves the illusion of separation. In full presence, the boundaries between self and world soften. One no longer feels like a separate fragment moving against life, but part of a larger flow moving within it. This recognition reduces the need to dominate, to control, to resist. Instead, there is cooperation with the unfolding of reality. Resistance is replaced with acceptance, and acceptance naturally brings peace. This does not mean passivity. It means acting from clarity instead of agitation, responding from strength instead of reaction.